serial killer was operating in their midst. This was the Lower East Side of Vancouver, British Columbia, and he was targeting sex trade workers. Depending on who you ask, the police may have been aware of his actions as early as the late 1980s. Certainly, by the late 1990s, the Vancouver Police Service was actively attempting to identify and apprehend this individual. They didn't have to look far. Despite suppressing media and public dialogue about the potential of a serial killer for as long as a decade, it turned out that there was one. Robert Pickton, who operated a pig farm in the Vancouver suburb of Port Coquitlam. Not all members of the VPD agreed with this denial. Detective Inspector Kim Rossmo, who holds a PhD in criminology and specializes in geographic profiling, had begun analyzing case data about missing sex trade workers in the mid-1990s. And by 1998, 4 years before Pickton was arrested, determined that there was a serial killer active in Vancouver. Rossmo's analysis marks an important turning point in the informationalization of policing practices in Canada and their subsequent modernization. Let's talk about that. Hello everyone, it's Professor Popham for CC100, an introduction to criminology. It's a snowy, blustery day out today, so I thought, for a change of pace, I'd film myself in front of my window. I'm hoping that you enjoy the snow as much as I do. Today's short video is going to focus on intelligence-led policing. This is a relatively recent policing strategy that has taken hold over the past 2 decades in relation to the rise of statistics and statistical analysis. Intelligence-led policing relies on the use and analysis of data to determine where the best areas for police officers to be present is. It's often impacted by a number of social features, such as time of day, time of year, weather, and other concerns. If you've ever had a chance to go to a Raptors, Leafs, or Blue Jays games, you may have noticed that there was an increased police presence. This is an example of that intelligence-led policing. While this technology has been very beneficial for society in many ways, we saw that at the beginning of this video, it also has some criticisms that we must consider. One such criticism was leveled by Cathy O'Neill, a mathematician who wrote a textbook in 2017 called Weapons of Math Destruction. Her goal was to discuss the way big data and data analytics was shaping municipal governance across North America, which concerned her to some extent. In particular, she drew attention to something called pernicious feedback loops. These feedback loops are a tautological process whereby underlying and pre-existing prejudices about a neighborhood were informing policy decisions that led to greater detriment to the neighborhood. She used CompStat, a type of software used by police services around the world, as an example. CompStat is a leader in that intelligence-led policing domain. And what it does is it analyzes the frequency of crimes that are occurring given a specific geographical scope, as well as time and other considerations. And then it directs police officers to patrol those areas at a given time in order to have the greatest impact on reducing crime. While this all sounds good, she points out that oftentimes police officers are already active and present in lower income areas. The point that O'Neill is making is that software like CompStat doesn't have the critical capacity to analyze whether there's an overabundance of police charges there because of over-policing or because it's a crime hotspot in the truest sense of the word. As a result, a greater number of police officers are dispatched to these risky neighborhoods, increasing the number of calls for service and thus reinforming the software that this is an important area. In the end, she suggests that algorithms such as those used by CompStat may in fact lead to a greater level of surveillance on impoverished or lower income neighborhoods. So do we trust the machine? Many critics have referred to modern forms of intelligence-led policing as black box policing. That is to say, the inputs go into a mysterious system and the outputs tell police officers what to do. There seems to be little dialogue about the in-between processes informing these decisions. Nonetheless, there are certain examples of the successes these systems bring. A great deal of effort and funding has been devoted to big data systems that streamline the application of justice. In my own research, where I've consulted with the community about the use of such technologies, I've found that public concern is less about the technology and more about critical assessment of its outputs. That's something I agree with. That's about it for this week. Thank you for tuning in.